What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Magical Musketeer deck profile. So I'm really excited to for you guys because this deck got a major power boost out of the Megatons, giving us an insanely powerful new tech card, Link into the Brains, which helps us make our copies of Magical Musketeer Max, which either gives us an insane amount of searches or a bunch of special summons. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name scripted in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Caspar, which is a really good 3 of in this deck. Now, all of your Magical Musketeer monsters actually share a common effect, that during either player's turn, you can activate Magical Musket spell or trap cards from your hand. And if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, then you get a unique effect, which is really awesome about this deck, because if your opponent activates a spell or trap card in the same column as your Magical Musketeer monster, it will actually go off as well, which is super cool. This card's unique ability is that you get to add a Magical Musket card from your deck to your hand if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, which is a really awesome effect to be able to get a search from the deck just by getting a spell or trap card in this card's column. I then play 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Starfire. Starfire is a great 3 of in the deck because if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, you get to special summon a level 4 lower Magical Musket monster from your deck in defense position, which is a great effect for this card to have because it can get you an additional monster, get a search, draws, even get cards out of the graveyard, which is absolutely crazy, or even link climb into some really powerful cards. I then play 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Kid Brave. Kid Brave is a great 3 of in the deck as well, because this card has a really good effect that if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, you can discard a Magical Musket card to draw 2 cards, which is a great effect to be able to use on this card just to dig into the deck for the exact card you need, like Link into the Brains. I then play 2 copies of Magical Musketeer Doc. Doc is a really good 2 of in the deck, but you only need 2 copies of this card because he's better in the late game, because this card has the ability if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, you get to add a Magical Musket card from your graveyard back to your hand, which is a great effect. I then play a single copy of Magical Musketeer Calamity, which is basically a monster reborn for this deck, because if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, you get to special summon one of your Magical Musket monsters back from the graveyard to your side of the field in defense position, which is a awesome effect. The only downside of this card is you cannot bring Max back because it puts them in defense position. I then play a single copy of Magical Musketeer Wild. Wild is a good 1 of in the deck as well that has the ability if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, you can shuffle 3 of your Magical Musket cards back into your deck from your graveyard to be able to draw a card, which is a great effect because you're going to be going through a bunch of Magical Musket cards and putting them back into the deck with Wild and then getting a draw is really nice. I then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is a great 3 of in the deck just to stop the opponent from searching the deck while we're going for all of our plays. This card is the best hand trap in the entire game and is just a really good card in this build. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is a really good 1 of the deck to stop the opponent from hand trapping us while we're going in for all of our searches or summons from the deck off of cards like Caspar or even Starfire. And this card is just an overall great 1 of. I then play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Pot of Desires is a great card in the deck because we can dig into this deck and banish 10 cards off the top of the deck to be able to draw 2. And since we play so many 3-ofs in this deck, this card is really, really good in this build, which is why we play it as a 2-of. I then play 3 copies of Link into the Brains. Link into the Brains is an insanely powerful card. I'm so glad that it's finally in the TCG, and it's a card I've been waiting forever to come to the TCG. It's so good in this deck and helps out the deck a lot because it has the ability to special summon 1 monster from your hand but negate its effects. Then, immediately as this card resolves, you get to link summon a Link monster using monsters that you control as material, including that monster. And this link summon cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is link summoned this way, basically making this card a speed spell for link summon of a Magical Musketeer Max, where your opponent cannot stop the effect of your Magical Musketeer Max, which is absolutely crazy. It also has the ability if a link monsters you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect while this card's in the graveyard, you can manage this card to add a monster from your graveyard back to your hand with the same original type as one of those destroyed monsters. which is a really neat effect, because if your copy of Magical Musketeer Max is destroyed, you can just banish this card and grab a Magical Musket monster back out of the graveyard, which is a really good effect to be able to use with Link into the Vrains. I'm so glad we finally have this card. I then play 3 copies of Magical Musket Cross Domination. This card is a great hand trap for the deck, because it has the ability that if you control a Magical Musket monster, then you can target a face-up monster on the field. Until the end of this turn, you change its attack and defense to 0 and negate its effects, which is a crazy powerful effect in this build, because just being able to use this card as a hand trap with any of your Magical Musket monsters on the field is absolutely crazy. I then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization is just a really good 3-of in the deck, because it can break the opponent's board, and it's a great card to be able to get rid of opponent's monsters so we can go in for game. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Magical Musket Crooked Crown. Crooked Crown is a great one of the deck, but I only feel like you need a single copy of this card, especially now that we have Link into the Vrains. This card is really good because you can only control one of this card, and then during the main phase, you can special summon a Magical Musket monster from your hand. And if you do, and if your opponent's monster zone in the same column is unused, that zone cannot be used into the end phase of this turn, even if this card leaves the field, which is a really interesting thing of this card to be a trap card, because you can actually activate it during the opponent's turn to get that special summon, which is super cool. I then play 2 copies of Magical Musket Needle Dancing. This card is really good in the deck because it's almost better in this deck than DD Crow, because this card can actually banish 3 cards instead of just 1 with DD Crow. This card is super good in the deck, so I play it as a 2-of, and especially since we're playing Desires, I like this card as a 2-of. I then play 3 copies of Magical Musket Desperado. Desperado is insanely powerful and my favorite Magical Musket card, just for how simple this card actually is and how effective it is. It has the ability, if you control a Magical Musket monster, target a face card on the field and destroy it. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and it's really good in this deck because it can pop floodgates, it can pop monsters, it can pop anything that's face up on the field, which is really nice. And definitely comment down below what your favorite Magical Musket card is. I then play 3 copies of Magical Musket Last Stand. Last Stand is extremely powerful because when your opponent activates any spell or trap card while you control a Magical Musket monster, negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card, which is a great effect to stop the opponent from using extremely powerful spells and trap cards while we're playing through the game. I then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is insanely powerful in the deck because it has the ability to target a face-up monster that your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Even if this card was set at activation, resolution, then basically you have the ability to negate every single card in this card's column that's a spell or trap card, which is really nice because you can lock down an entire column, forcing your opponent to play in another column that a Magical Musketeer monster might be in, which is really awesome. But overall, this card is great in the deck because it is a monster negate to target a face-up monster and negate its effects. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck because that's it for the main deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Magical Musketeer Max. I wanted to play 3 copies of this card, but the extra deck is extremely tight with Super Poly, which is why I bumped this card down to 2. And with Link into the Vrains and the opponent not being able to respond to this card, I felt like 2 was totally fine. And you guys are going to see why this card is absolutely crazy with Link into the Vrains, because it has the ability that if this card is Link summoned, you can activate one of these 2 effects. Either add Magical Musketeer or Magical Musket spell or trap cards with different names from your deck to your hand, up to the number of monsters that your opponent controls, or special summon Magical Musket monsters with different names from your deck up to the number of spell or trap cards that your opponent controls, and you can only use the effects this card once per turn, and then it shares the ability that during either player's turn, you can activate Magical Musket spell or traps from your hand, which is insanely powerful. This card gives you either like a +3 or a +3 of monsters, or a +3 on a search of your spells and traps that are going to interact with the opponent and stop them, and it's really insane. This card is so good in the deck, and it's just like one of the best Link monsters right now in the game with Link into the Brains. I absolutely love this card. I then play a single copy of Access Code Talker. You can play Borrelsword or Borreload if you want a more budget option, but I really like Access Code in this deck because it gives us additional pops. I then play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, which is just really nice in this deck. One copy of Unicorn or Phoenix in the deck. Phoenix is really good because Phoenix will pop spells and traps. One copy of IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena is really good overall because it will let you make your copy of unicorn during the opponent's turn to spin cards, which is really nice. I then play a single copy of number 39 Utopia, because we're going to be able to use this card to make a copy of Utopia the Lightning. Utopia the Lightning is a great monster to summon with your copy of Starfire, because Starfire will summon a copy of either Calamity or Wild to your side of the field. Then you can overlay for your copy of Utopia and then the Lightning to do a 5,000 attack point monster, which is really nice. One copy of Abyss Dweller just to shut down graveyards, and so we can make Zeus. I'm playing a single copy of number 43, or number 49, excuse me, Fortune Tomb, which is just really nice overall to make in the deck. One copy of Downer Magician, and then finally a single copy of Zeus to board wipe the opponent for the XZ monsters. For the super poly targets, I'm playing a single copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This card is really good in the deck to be able to use against the opponent if you can make it and your opponent puts dark monsters on the field. One copy of Garura. Garura is really insane for a super poly target and literally breaks super poly, which is insane because it takes two monsters with the same type and attribute but different names, which is just crazy powerful to be able to use. And then finally, a single copy of Dracos Tapalia, just in case we're going up against a tier limit player or any fusion deck like Despia or anything like that. Maybe even Heroes. This card is really insane. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really insane deck. If you guys have never played Magical Musketeer, you definitely should. I've been playing this deck since release, before we had Max and all the other cards and Link into the Vrains, and it was fun then, but this deck is truly crazy now. It's super fun to be able to play, and a deck I've actually considered carrying to locals and like competing in the tournament with, and I might do that in the future for live duels. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.